Hey, 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 hey. Hi, everyone. It's Sam. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, hang on, Ryan usually does these intros, but he's not here. Ryan is currently all the way over in Florida. He's doing Epic Universe, he's doing Halloween Horror Nights, he's doing a little bit at Disney. He's having a great time, but he's miles away. And he's supposed to be sort of getting his training, but I don't really know where he is, to be honest. So it's just me today on the podcast, and we're going to be talking about everything that this. Oh, hang on. Is that Ryan's train coming in? What? Ryan? I think Ryan's train just
I'm
landed.
here. I'm back. I'm back.
Ryan!
Can you believe it? I'm back, baby. Back, baby. I'm back from Halloween Horror Nights, Epic Universe, Universal Studios, Disney, all of it. I think I've got a little bit of a tan, maybe. You can't really tell because I've got like an orange background anyway.
Well,
But yeah,
no,
how are you doing, Sam? You all right?
I'm very well. Good to see you. I'm so pleased you're back. And you do have an orange tan, and I would say the orange wool only accentuates and exacerbates, isn't that a word? The tan. You're looking great. You're looking fresh. I can't wait to catch up at everything because I'm still an Epic Universe virgin. So, or
I need
am
to,
I?
I need to tell you I need to tell you all about Epic Universe. I need to tell you what I really thought about Epic Universe. That's what I need to tell you.
Oh, I can't wait to get into it. I can't wait. So, for those who are just joining us then and are listening, Ryan, when did you go away? How long was your trip for? Just to give us a rough rundown if you're just joining us now, and then we'll jump into Epic.
So we went to Florida for 2 weeks. We went from Manchester Airport, we went to Orlando, and we stayed at Universal Studios, stayed at Cabana Bay again for the second time. So yeah, a couple of weeks. We did 2 days at Epic Universe. So we had one day that was part of our 14-day ticket, and then I had to buy another ticket because you can't go as many times as you want at the moment. That was an extra £130 each or something. So yeah, and yeah, so in 2 days, I managed to get a pretty good idea of the park, what I liked, what I didn't like, so much. And I can't wait to reveal to you, what I really thought.
So then let's start with you arrive at Epic Universe for your first day. Obviously, you've said before in a previous podcast that you've got a rough idea of the layout of the park. You know the lands, you know kind of roughly what's going on, but you hadn't looked at any spoilers when it came to the rides or POVs or anything. So let's talk about you get off that coach from Cabana Bay. You've done the lazy river in the morning or the day before with your cocktails floating on your donut. And because we all know that's the reason why Ryan and Shelley secretly love Cabana Bay. They claim it's for the value, it's for the lazy river.
For the
And
lazy
so
river, yeah.
it's great. It's great. I've never been, but I'm sure it's great. And so you arrive in off the bus and you're looking at that wonderful towering entrance. You walk in. What are your first impressions to that immediate expanse that you see?
So first things first, when we got off the bus, I had a race on with the other bus that came from Hard Rock Hotel. So I had to make sure I got a mosey on and I beat those people. So the first thing is make sure you're quite snappy off the bus and make sure those posh people that are staying at Hard Rock Hotel, make sure you beat them to the line. So one thing that's quite interesting with Epic Universe is that they kind of open the park in stages. So the first thing that they do is they kind of keep you outside the gates. On the first day, we were probably about 5 deep from the gate, so we're pretty close. And what was quite interesting is that the on the first day, one of the security guards kind of got like really into it in terms of opening the park. So as we literally walked towards the gates, this security guard just kind of threw out his hands and went, "Welcome to Epic," and it was crazy. And he was like, "You need to wait there. I'm going to get my friend Hagrid out." And then he brought out this kind of other beardy security guard that was like his sidekick. And I was thinking, is this guy really a security guard or is he part of the entertainment staff? No, he was really a security guard. So they're really getting into it. So the first thing is that then you kind of get through the first part of security, you kind of do all your, and then they've got the kind of fancy facial recognition now at Epic Universe. So really all that happened is they kind of just put the camera in your face, and because we'd already been to Universal Studios before then and activated our tickets, they already had our picture on file. So all we had to do is look at the camera, and then once we looked at the camera, then they just let you through. So that was quite impressive. Then what they do is they kind of take you to the main gate where the gyrosphere is, and then they kind of take you to two different sides. So you kind of go on one. You can either go on the right hand side or the left hand side. Now, if you choose to go on the right hand side, that probably means that you're going straight to Harry Potter, which is what we did on the first day. Then if you go to the left, that means that you're probably going to Mario or through to Dark Universe, but most people are going through to Mario. And they kind of held us there, and then they do like a kind of opening ceremony. So they do like a bit of an opening ceremony. So the gyrosphere, I think they call it the Helios. This is probably something I should probably actually know. But the gyrosphere that's on top of the main gate is actually still when you enter. And the whole idea is that they do an opening ceremony where the gyrosphere kind of gradually starts to turn, and you see it very gradually turn, and then all of a sudden it just starts to spin, and then they go, "Welcome to Epic Universe." And then the idea is that once that gyrosphere starts to spin, it means that the worlds have been opened, the portals have been opened across the park. So it's very impressive, and kind of actually helps you understand the park a little bit more, because the whole idea, it's a completely new concept really for a park to have these very distinct portal areas. Normally you're quite used to being able to kind of just walk between land to land, at a traditional park. But here you have to physically walk out of the portal and then into another portal. So then what happened is, so we decided to rope drop the Harry Potter Ministry of Magic on the first day. Now, it wasn't due to open until 10 o'clock, but because we were staying at Universal Studios, it wasn't due to open at 10 o'clock, but because we were staying at Universal Orlando Resort, we're staying at Cabana Bay, we got in at 9 o'clock, which was early entry, but Ministry of Magic isn't early entry. However, they took us through the entire queue line, we got to go through the metro, flew. Then we just had to kind of wait in line, and they just kept saying, well, you're going to be waiting here for an hour, basically, and it's not going to open early, blah, blah, blah. But eventually, they actually started the ride at around 9:45, so we got on. We were sort of heading there about 15 minutes early. We got right to the ride. We were just about to get on the ride, and then all the lights turned on. And then we just started seeing, and I've done a reel on Instagram of this, and I was like, I'm no expert, but I think this is a bad thing. All the lights have come on, and the carriages just kept like going by and going by and going by. And all the staff were like, well, we wish we could tell you what was going on, but we don't actually know. All we know is we're not allowed to put any people on the ride. So that was a great start to the day. So we probably waited there another half an hour, and then eventually did get on the ride. But by the time we got off the ride, it was almost like 11 o'clock at this point. So we kind of lost the early ride time. We then went over to Dark Universe, and we rode on Curse of the Werewolf. Because we were a bit late out of the Harry Potter ride, we had to wait about 25 minutes. And then we went over to do Monsters Unchained. So in the end, on the first trip that we did to the park, we managed to ride pretty much every single ride apart from Donkey Kong Minecart Madness and also the Celestial Carousel. So we had a pretty good day on the first day, but then things didn't go so well on the second day.
I was going to say, I was so sure with all of this that there was going to be a but. How annoying that, the Ministry of Magic, a battle for the Ministry of Magic broke down, but at least, you know, at least you managed to get on it, and you got on that first day on all the big kind of e-tickets. Especially, I think Ministry and Monsters Unchained are the two big ones that everyone's talking about, and I guess Donkey Kong Monkey Madness, but at least you got on those two major e-tickets. But what happened on the second day?
Started off very well, very same procedure, but we went to the left instead of to the right, and we went to Donkey Kong Minecart Madness. luckily, they'd only just decided that Minecart Madness now was an early entry ride, so it was due to open at 9, whereas previously it was due to open at 10, and actually started off really well. We were on and off Minecart Madness by 9:15, so we only waited about 15 minutes, pretty much walked through the entire queue. We then went over to the Curse of the Werewolf again and walked on to Curse of the Werewolf. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. We then went over to Monsters Unchained, then walked on to Monsters Unchained. We then did no more rides that day because everything broke. Stardust Racers went down to one train and then went off and on all day. They were having massive issues with Stardust Racers. The Ministry of Magic, they decided that they were going to close it early, so we did try to do single rider on it, but we're even at, I think we went over about 2:30 in the afternoon. Considering that the park closes at 10 p.m., we went over about 2:30 to be told that they'd already closed the single rider queue line.
So you know me, I've worked in entertainment pretty much my entire life. You know, I love entertainment, especially immersive and theme park entertainment. And Epic Universe has arguably some of the biggest shows in a theme park out there. So, did you manage to get to the big shows? Obviously, there's the one in on the French side of Harry Potter, but then there's also the House Train Your Dragon show. So, talk to me about those two shows. Did you manage to see them? What did you like? What did you not like? Without giving too much away, we don't want many spoilers here.
Yeah, so we saw both the shows, and this is another thing that actually I think Epic Universe is missing, having another 2 or even 3 more shows than what they've got at the moment. I think they've maybe missed a trick not having at least a kind of DreamWorks style ensemble type show in the Nintendo land. I think something like that would have been good. You know, if they'd have had, like how when you go and watch the DreamWorks show, and you see the trolls and Shrek, it's just like they come out, they do like a song, and then they go. It would have been good if they could have done that with the characters. You know, Luigi comes out and does a song, and then Mario, whatever. I think something like that could have been good. But yes, we watched both the shows. I would say by far, the Untrainable Dragon is the best show on the park. The Circus Arcanus or Circus Arcanus, I don't know how it should be pronounced. I would say it was a good show, but there's some issues with the way that I would say that the show is kind of handled. So you have to kind of queue up in the circus tent kind of area, and that's fine. But then they take you through to like a pre-show area, so you've already been stood for like half an hour in a queue line. And then you think, oh, great, I'm going to get to go and sit down now. No, you're going to go and stand in a room, a crowded room with lots of other people, very close together, and then have to wait like potential. We had to wait like another 20 minutes, and then they did like the pre-show, and that was like sort of 10 minutes long or something like that. And I've been reading sort of comments online, and people are not as impressed as we weren't impressed either by the fact that we had to kind of stand in the heat and then had to go into another room and then stand. And Shelley said to me, she goes, the show's not in here, is it? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I think we actually go into a seated area at some point. But yeah, so I would say it's worth seeing. It's a good show, but try not to have to queue too long, because you are going to have to go into another standing area for a period of time even after that. And there's no option to sit whatsoever, so it's not. You say, and a few people have made this comment that you kind of, it would be good if you had the option to arrive early and then there was at least some benches at the front. So if you've, or for those people who've been standing the longest, at least you could get a bench. And then the people who are arriving a bit later, then they won't mind as much being stood at the back. But instead, there's no seating whatsoever in that pre-show. But it was quite impressive. But I would say the How to Train a Dragon show, we tried to see it on the first day that we went there, but the show went down. So the show went down. So the shows do go down as well. That's something to bear in mind because they are very technical. But we did manage to see it on the second day that we visited, and I would say the Untrainable Dragon is the better of the two shows by far. So if you only have a choice to see one, I would definitely say see that one. Don't worry too much about the other one.
So, was there anything in the park when you were going around that you kind of had your hopes up really high for, and that unfortunately it didn't live up to expectations? Now, I want to focus this specific question on rides, right, like attractions. So, was there any attraction or ride in the park that you had your hopes on, you were really looking forward to it, and then unfortunately it just missed the mark? And to further the question, on the flip side, was there any attraction that you went in there with an open mind and perhaps you weren't neither high nor neither here nor there about it, but then it really exceeded your expectations?
So I've got like three things. So I've got like one ride that was hyped up a lot to me, that was a disappointment. I've got a ride that I knew about, but I didn't really expect anything from, but exceeded my expectations. And then I had a ride that I hadn't made my mind up about based on what I'd read. Um, but ultimately, I made a firm decision on whether I liked it or not in the end. So, the first one that I would say the ride that exceeded my expectations that I really didn't pay much attention to was actually Hiccup's Wing Gliders, which is, people have called it like a poor man's Hagrid's because it's basically it's kind of similar to Hagrid's in a way, in the sense that it's got a couple of launches and it's got interactive kind of elements like show elements and things like that. But I would say, I would say that despite it being it's basically a family thrill coaster, I would say despite that, it was actually quite thrilling. The restraints were very comfortable, and it was just really silky smooth. The ride was so silky smooth, and I really enjoyed it. And we were really lucky on the first day that we visited that we went to Hiccup's Wing Gliders, and it was only at like a 10-minute queue. And then as soon as we came off, there was literally no queue whatsoever. So we just rode it again straight away. Because I said to Shelley once we came off it, I said, "Look, we're gonna have to just ride that again because there's no queue," and it was really good. So the ride that was like really hyped to me, some people said that this was the best ride that they've ever been on, ever, and that was the Battle of the Ministry. And I would say it was a good ride, but I don't think it's worth, a 3 hour wait for sure. It's probably a ride that I'd probably happily wait like 45 minutes to an hour for. It was pretty good. But I was kind of surprised by like the I don't want to give away any spoilers, but I think people already know like the basic storyline is that it's around Umbridge, who tried to take over the ministry. And actually her animatronic and the kind of projection mapping that they did was a little bit janky, I would say. It wasn't to the standard, that I expected it to be, actually. It was a little bit below standard. And actually, I think a couple of the scenes were maybe slightly broken because we kind of went over to them and we kind of saw like half a screen or just darkness and like some audio. So I don't think the whole ride was actually operating. And also in terms of the way that the car operates, there is meant to be, and I won't give it away, but there's meant to be an element that happens during the ride that is currently not happening because it shuts down the ride when it does it, basically. So it's already in like B mode in the way they operate. So I would say overall, and also it didn't really seem to carry the capacity that I was kind of expecting, because you go into like a loading area and there's four like lifts that you go into. I kind of expected there to be more than that. So actually I don't know if it actually can eat as much capacity as maybe what it should do potentially. So for me, I mean, I wish I'd have been able to ride it again, but like I said, they kind of closed the queue line down early on the second trip. But I would say I thought it was good. Definitely a good ride, but it's not the best. It's not the best ride in the world, in my opinion.
Right, because people were, when this first debuted, people were fans were coming off in tears, crying, saying that it was just the most incredible theme park attraction ever created. So you've said about Ministry of Magic not holding up to your expectation. You've said about wing gliders exceeding your expectation. Now, you said there was one thing, there was one attraction in the middle. I don't know if we've covered that, but what was your attraction in the middle that you said that you were neither kind of here nor there about?
So the ride, that I'd heard mixed things about was Stardust Racers. Some people's opinion was that it wasn't as good as Velocicoaster. It was more of a some people described it as like a kind of more of a family kind of roller coaster, which it definitely isn't, by the way. And some people said like the launches aren't as good as on Velocicoaster, and also the other thing is that they had to heavily trim Stardust Racers. If people aren't familiar with Stardust Racers, it's pretty much Icon's big brother, I would say. It's a gigantic. It's like if Icon had a big brother that went away to work in the navy and ate nothing but steak every day and came back totally jacked and huge and unrecognizable. Because it's an absolute monster. Honestly, I said to Shelley, I've seen pictures of Stardust Racers before we went, and when we went over to it, I was like, this is huge. This is so much bigger. Like, just even looking at the loading station, I was like, this is like nothing I've ever seen before. This is incredible. Honestly, like the size, the scale of it, and everything. And we rode it twice during the day. We rode the green and the yellow. If people aren't aware, in my opinion, the yellow is more thrilling. Now, one nugget, and before I forget, I spoke to quite a number of staff who were part of the opening team at Epic Universe, and I started having a conversation with them about Universal UK. What they were saying is that a lot of the people who are on that opening team at Epic Universe are currently in process of trying to now get put on the team that opens Universal UK. So I thought that was interesting because I know that we have a lot of speculation over in the UK. Is it happening? Isn't it happening? Well, clearly within Universal, people are already having very serious discussions about. Well, look, I'm part of the opening team at Epic Universe, and these guys will move around. Part of these opening teams, and they're already now thinking about. Actually, we want to go to the UK, and it was really good that all these people that I spoke to were really really excited about bringing Universal to the UK, which just to me means that what we're going to get in the UK isn't going to be a watered down version of the Universal experience. It's going to be as good as, if not better than some other Universal experiences across the world. So I think that's a very positive sign for Universal UK. Based on those conversations.
It was mentioned recently, actually, by the CEO of Universal at he was at some sort of Bank of America conference, I think, and he said he literally likened the UK park in terms of scale and substance to Epic Universe directly. So I think if you're saying Epic Universe, obviously it has its sort of teething issues, and I'm sure over the next year that those will get sorted out. But if you're saying it's as much of a spectacle as it is both day and night, then yeah, we're in for something incredible in the UK, and it's so exciting that it's happening and that's all sort of coming to fruition. I mean, you just can't imagine in 5 years' time, 6 years' time, we're going to have a fully fledged Universal Park here on our soil. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And do you know what's really interesting based on the back of that comment as well is that while I was scrolling through, as I do on a regular basis, through trademark registrations to do with Universal, Universal have actually registered Celestial Park in the UK. So I know that obviously they've registered Universal Studios United Kingdom Resort. They've also recently registered Universal UK Resort. So maybe they haven't quite decided like on the name, or they're just trying to cover all bases. But why have they registered Celestial Park? Well, I think probably because they're expecting that Universal Studios is going to be a huge success, and the next thing to come to the UK is Epic Universe, essentially.
But there was one more thing I wanted to ask you. There's one more. I know obviously this is a one episode as it is, but there is one more area that we haven't touched upon that I think we can just briefly you know, talk about is obviously Epic Universe has got a plethora of restaurants. So I just want to know one of two things. What was the most immersive restaurant that was more of an experience that you ate at? And then my second thing is, what was the best food item, whether it was a novelty food item or a main plate or whatever it was? What was the best sort of food item you actually ate in the park?
Before I get into that, can I have a little rant about something
Rant away, rant away.
related to food? Can I just say that if you are going to a theme park and you're ordering food, it's still it still is actual food, and you should consume the food that you order. So if you buy, for example, a butterbeer crepe and a giggle water and a butterbeer, don't just put it down. Take a picture and then take a sip and then get up and leave, because it's just it's incredibly wasteful, and to me it's incredibly disrespectful as well, and it's just completely out of touch with the fact that there's a lot of people who, in fact most of the people in the entire world have absolutely zero chance of being able to go to Epic Universe and to be able to eat a butterbeer crepe. And you're incredibly privileged to be able to do that and at least have the decency to finish the thing that you've ordered and actually eat it. And I've seen so much wastage, particularly at Epic Universe, of people taking pictures of things, taking one sip or one bite, and then just getting up and walking out. And I saw people do that in the Serene Cafe, and I saw people do it in the Toadstool Cafe as well. And I just think it's crazy. So feel free to disagree with me if you want, but I think you're in the wrong if you're doing that. And I don't think there's any excuse for doing that, especially when it's two of you ordering one thing and then getting up and walking out. I'm sure between you, you can manage to eat the thing that you ordered.
So is this that is shocking that people are doing that, and it is wasteful. You know, as someone that's lived in, hesitant to say, sort of developing countries and things where poverty is a real thing, and even in our own countries, poverty is a massive issue, and people can't sometimes even afford to eat, or they're on the breadline. You know, so you're right. There is a massive privilege there. Do you think this is because we're seeing a trend now of theme park food becoming so sort of Instagrammable that people just want to buy it for the aesthetic of it and don't actually care about the taste or the fact that it is actual food?
Yeah, I think so. I think they don't even think it's normal food. I think they think, oh, it's theme park food, so I can take a picture of it and then leave. Maybe the parks are slightly to blame for this, because more and more we're seeing grammable, what we call grammable food. We get it for the gram, and I have to admit, I take a lot of pictures of the food that I eat, but I do actually eat it. So fair enough if you order, and just like, if you really just want to go and take pictures of food, at least just go with, like, four of you or something and order one thing. Take four pictures. You all can pretend that you got it each if you really want, but at least just eat it. Like, between you, just eat the thing.
So let's talk then about the restaurant. So going back to my question, what was the most
Yeah.
immersive kind of restaurant experience that you ate in and that you thought, wow, this is an experience that we're having?
So they were all quite immersive. Like, so this is the other thing with Epic Universe, is that it's the theming everywhere is like, in when you're in the portal, everything's immersive. So whereas you might be in like a normal theme park, and you'll go on a ride which is heavily themed, and then next to the ride there'll be a restaurant that's sort of themed, like it might have a few, but not really. But in Epic Universe, everything is heavily themed. So I would say, the only one that the one that I really wanted to go to, that maybe didn't quite live up to my expectations, because it, like Be Our Guest, felt like a big canteen, was Toadstool Cafe. So if you kind of sat in the middle of Toadstool Cafe, it's pretty cool. But if you sat around the edges like we were, it just felt like a big canteen. Um, Everything was heavily themed. Even the chairs were like heavily themed, and it was cool. I'm glad that we went in there, but it did feel like a big canteen. Now compare that to Burning Blade Tavern, for example. There's literally only like 4 tables in there, and then they've got like a sort of bit in the middle where you can stand. So if you're lucky enough to get a table, Burning Blade Tavern actually feels very immersive because it literally feels like you're in this small tavern like in the middle of like the monsters universe, and they have the like special cocktails that you can get, and sometimes the kind of monster hunters come into the Burning Blade Tavern, and every now and then the Burning Blade Tavern sets on fire. Um, so I would say that was very immersive. The next, in terms of immersion, I would say both in the Harry Potter world, uh, but the Cafe La Serene, that was the one we really wanted to go to because that had the butterbeer crepe, which we did eat all of, by the way. Um, however, again felt like a big canteen, and this is where these kind of restaurants fall down, is that a lot of the theming is beautiful, but they've obviously trying to get so many tables in there that it feels like you're just in a big canteen, as opposed to if you went to Le Goblet Noir, which was a little bit further down the road, which I don't think people have quite. I think not a lot of people seem to really know that that actually exists, and that has lots of. And while it is very big, there's a lot of tables in there. There's so many different rooms, so you round sort of different nooks and crannies. So there could be like hundreds of people in there, but it wouldn't feel like it because there's just so many different areas. And we were sat on a table like next to this huge fireplace, and it just felt like you were in this kind of old, kind of ramshackled kind of tavern, having your butter beer, and we had a sharing platter of like random sort of bits, like like what do you call it, the Scotch eggs and things like that. We had like a sharing platter, and that was fine. But yeah, so I think Goblet Noir for me was the better of the options within the Wizarding World.
Isn't there a meant to be a steakhouse that's in more dark the dark universe? There's a steakhouse, right, with
Oh,
vampires
Das
roaming around.
Das Steakhouse. Yeah, we didn't get into Das Steakhouse
Hmm.
because we just didn't get a chance because we wanted to try the Goblet Noir. But yeah, based on the videos that I've seen, that looks good. But we never got a chance to go in it. And also the reason is because we went back to the Burning Blade Tavern again because we liked because they don't do like lots of food in Burning Tavern, but what they do is like kind of like chili cheese bites, and they have like fun like cocktails and things. So we just in the end we're like, oh, should we just go back to Burning Blade Tavern? So that's what we ended up doing. So
One
yeah.
one more thing I wanted to ask you is how were the sort of roaming entertainment, the sort of character actors and the sort of streetmosphere, was that a thing? Because obviously these worlds have such amazing IPs. Did you manage to have interactions with any of these characters? Were they roaming? Were there meet and greets? And what was your thoughts?
So the only roaming characters that we came into contact with was within the Dark Universe. We came across quite a few there actually, because we came across the Invisible Man and also came across Igor as well. On the first day that we were there, we also met Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein as well. They weren't roaming, but we were lucky that they were just literally about to come on stage to do the meet and greet, and the guy like saw us hanging around and went, "Look, if you come, look, Frankenstein's going to come out in like 2 minutes. So do you want to just?" And we're like, "Yeah, all right, why not?" So we met a few of them. When it came to the character, there weren't any roaming characters as far as I could tell within the Harry Potter world. And to be honest, it was so busy all the time that I don't know if they've had much success. There are meant to be some hanging around. We didn't see any. In terms of the How to Train a Dragon, we did see a couple of characters pass by, but we didn't really have any interactions. We went to Mead Hall at there as well, but that wasn't very immersive. So that wasn't as that was a bit more forgettable. Um, and then when it came to Nintendo World, I think they should have built Super Nintendo World maybe like 3 times bigger, because I know that they have made it big. You know, it is bigger than the Hollywood version, and I think it's bigger potentially than the Japan version, but I'm not entirely sure on that. And it's across 2 levels. It just feels like too. It feels too restricted. It kind of feels claustrophobic, and I think, because it's so everything's moving and it's so energetic, it feels like too much. It feels overbearing. And the way that they kind of managed their characters was that they kind of had a bit in the middle of the land, and they would appear, and then a huge horde of people would just kind of take up the middle of the land, which wasn't a great way of managing it. Really, they should really have a separate area away from the center of the land where they do the meet and greets, because it made it feel even more claustrophobic. So I think we saw Princess Peach and we might have seen Mario and Luigi, passing by, but we just didn't have any chance for any interactions because there were just too many people queuing up and too many people around, and it just felt so claustrophobic that, to be honest, we just wanted to get out of there. So
It's interesting that you're saying this about Super Mario World, because I felt the exact same way. So last September, this time last year, I was in Japan and we were at Universal Studios in Osaka. And as you've heard from the episode, if you've listened, we went to Nintendo World and I was very excited for it. However, I feel the exact same way. I felt like it was Japan's is over 2 levels, and it was just too enclosed and too claustrophobic and too tight. And I actually found it incredibly overstimulating because there was noise and moving things and rides going around and just hordes of people, and it just felt like wherever you were moving in all the pathways, you were constantly battling against lots of other people, you know, budging shoulders or slipping through crowds. And it just got to a point where even being in that world for 15 minutes, 20 minutes was literally exhausting, because it was just too crammed in. And so personally, we didn't spend that long in Nintendo World when we were there because I just found it, I almost had a headache. And so when I came out, I literally took a deep breath when I came out, being like, because my head was throbbing because it was just noise and lights, and it was like sensory overload. So yeah, it was really, really good just to get out of there when it was. So it's interesting that you had the same feeling, because I thought I was alone in thinking that this was a really overstimulating environment.
maybe we're just getting too old, Sam. I think that's what it is.
Quite possibly. We like our small little taverns where we can have our nacho cheese bites and a
Yeah.
cocktail and sit in the dark is what I'm hearing.
One of the best things that we did on the second day at Epic Universe was in the Tiki Bar in Celestial Park. We literally, and we got like souvenir Tiki cups, which apparently get you like lifetime discounts in the Tiki Bar, apparently. And I had like a margarita, and we just sat there watching the fountain show, and it was nice and warm, and it's quite calming. It's Celestial Park. Before I went to Epic Universe, I didn't really understand Celestial Park. I thought, this makes no sense. Why have you got this kind of like almost nothingness like in the middle of the entire park? But when you're in the park, it makes a lot of sense, and especially when you're coming out of Super Nintendo World or Dark Universe, which are quite stimulating, to kind of leave that and to go into this kind of almost like galactic calm, which is what Celestial Park is. It just kind of changes the experience a little bit, because what what Celestial Park does is, I think it resets your brain away from what you've just experienced, which then makes the other experience better. Because whereas in traditional parks, you'll go from you'd probably walk from Dark Universe into Super Nintendo World, and you'll be trying to pass by to get to the How to Train a Dragon land, and everything's just like go 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 go. Whereas this is so much different, because you leave in Super Nintendo World, and then you just get this kind of calm,
Well, I've got to say, despite the ups and downs, I'm very jealous that you've been, and I am absolutely planning to go myself next year, probably towards the end of next year, maybe this time next year, once the ticket becomes, an unlimited visit, um, which I think is from the start of October next year. I want to say is when the ticket becomes unlimited. So that's my
Okay.
plan. But I'm trying to stay spoiler free. So I am very tempted though to go and watch some park tours and see the park tours. But I'm also like, I've stayed spoiler free this long that I might just keep it fresh for it's just one more year. I've got to wait.
I wouldn't spoil it because, I wouldn't watch anything in terms of the rides because actually the POVs won't be able to do it justice. Um, I would say, overall, the theming, the consistency of the theming is a level beyond any other theme park in the world. Definitely, there's no other theme park that comes close to the storytelling, the thought, and the care that's been put into the theming of the rides. Just walking through the queue line of the Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge is an experience. Um, it's and even though the ride isn't quite as good as what I'd like it to be, the experience of just going through the ride and go is an experience in itself. In the future, I think Dark Universe could do with an expansion. I think originally there was going to be a Creature of the Black Lagoon ride, which I think got cut, and I think in hindsight they could have done with it really. Um, but yeah, I think it's definitely a step beyond. It's a step above anything else in the world. The It's just a shame that the park doesn't quite operate at the level that it should be at the moment.
Yet, yeah,
So
yeah,
I'd avoid going. My opinion would be if someone listening to this is thinking I may or may not go this year, I would say don't go this year. Basically, I
yeah.
would say go next year because I'm sure that all these kind of operational issues can be
Mm,
worked out. They're not fatal. It doesn't mean the park will never be fully operational. It
mm,
will be.
mm.
All new parks have these kind of issues. Um, it's just that at the moment they still haven't managed to work through all the issues yet. So wait till next year, and especially when if you're coming from the UK and you get an unlimited ticket, at least if it's a bad day, then you can just leave
Yeah,
and then and then go back
go
the day
back.
after.
Totally.
The other the other thing I would say is that if you are tied into going this year, ironically, the best times to go to Epic Universe are at the weekend. Um, what you want to do is make sure you avoid Mondays and Tuesdays because
Mm,
by far, for some reason, those are currently the busiest times that you can go to the park.
mm.
So I would try and go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday if you're going to go to the park at the moment, but I would avoid Mondays in particular if you can.
There you go, everyone. You heard it here first. This was Ryan's major trip to Epic Universe. In fact, he took
Yeah.
us on a physical trip to Epic Universe. Very exciting indeed. Um, well, I guess as I open the show, I'm going to close the show because why not, Ryan? I'm taking over. Why not?
Why not?
So,
Take over. Yeah.
Ryan, do you want to tell people where they can find you?
Well, they can find me. Um, They can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. If you're not already subscribed, then do click the subscribe button below on YouTube. Make sure you're following us on one of your favorite podcast apps, whether that be Spotify, Apple, Amazon, etc. We're also on Instagram and Facebook at Theme Park Loopy, and we do lots of reels and things like that. We've got lots going on at Halloween, and we're going to be doing more on YouTube. So we're trying to kick off YouTube a little bit more. So we really appreciate you watching this. If you've managed to get to the end, maybe we're not going to do an end of show club today, but in the future you might get to experience an end of show club on YouTube, which I don't think we've done before.
There
So
you go.
that's something that might be a new experience in the future. So yeah, that's where you can find it. Sam, where can they find you?
Well, you can find me on Theme Park Loopy as well. I used to have an Instagram account called Coaster Sam. It's still live. You can still see all the archive stuff there. However, I'm mainly just attached to the Theme Park Loopy these days as life goes on. But my friends, thank you so much for listening and for joining in this wonderful, wonderful deep dive of Ryan's epic trip to Epic. It was amazing. Now, Ryan always says, see you real soon. So I'm going to say, sayonara. Bye-bye, everyone.
Sayonara.